The guy I met for coffee that called me for hours straight afterwards. Hi, all. I've lurked here from time to time and recently posted this in Reddit The Girl's Survival Guide and got a lot of encouragement to post it here as well. I added a little to add detail now that I'm not weeping into a glass of bourbon while I'm typing about it. It may seem ridiculous, but writing about it is making it somewhat easier to deal with. Originally posted May 21st, 2018. I met a guy this weekend. We were at the same restaurant. He was with a wedding party. I was with family, not connected to the wedding or couple in any way. He was polite and respectful and offered me his number. I took it and decided to text him. We texted for a day or so and then made arrangements to get together for coffee. We got together in the middle of the day at a public place. I drove myself. I texted a friend and told her where I'd be and the guy's name. I figured I was being overly cautious. The first three-fourths of the conversation was normal enough. We talked about work, schooling, basketball, etc. It turned out he was a lot younger than I thought he was. He's 22, I'm 35. He went from being kind of shy and very respectful to telling me a story about how the night after the wedding, he came home and people were being crazy. I asked him what he meant, and then he elaborated to tell me he walked into his bedroom and lesbian girls I know were having sex on my bed, but he was a gentleman and didn't stick around to watch, and then locked eyes and asked, "Have you ever been in that kind of situation before?" I said, "Well, I've lived in apartments, so I've heard people sometimes," and he pushed further and asked, "No, but have you ever walked in on something like that?" I said, "No, that's a weird story to tell someone you just met," and changed the subject. He talked about himself a lot. He did ask me questions, but would interrupt me when I tried to answer and continued to talk about himself. Something felt odd. He was not acting like he was the night I met him. He leaned in over the table a lot and made noticeable effort to lock eyes with me. I like eye contact, but it felt more like a stare down after a while. I could feel myself moving away the further he leaned in. He started to talk about how he used to pick up girls, but he doesn't do that anymore because he realized the girls he picked up at the bars were probably whores who went there every weekend. Then he wanted to know if I drank, smoked, did drugs, did I ever party? Where did I party? Where did I like to go out to? Do I see other men, etc., etc., etc.? Almost no pauses. One question after the other. We talked for a few minutes more, and he looked at his phone and said, "The game I want to watch is gonna start soon. Do you want to get out of here?" Turns out there was a basketball game on, and he wanted me to come back to his place and watch it. I said, "No thanks, we just met, so I'm not comfortable with that. But maybe we can talk again soon." His face sort of changed, and he said, "I'm sorry, but I really thought you were going to come back with me." I told him I wasn't sure how he got that impression. I had not at any point said I would do that. He kept asking me to come back to his place, and I kept saying no. He kept asking me why not. I kept saying, "I just met you. I'm not comfortable going back to your house." He said, "Fine, let's go to the park then." Red flags and alarm bells were going off, so I said, "No thanks, I'm not interested." He basically begged and said he'd even skip the game if I wanted him to. I said, "No, just go home. We just met for coffee. It's not a big deal if we can't take it further today." He then asked me to take a walk in the field behind the coffee shop, looked at the ground, and literally said, "I'll do anything you want, just don't leave." I said again I wasn't going to go anywhere with him that day. "Please just respect that and we'll talk later." I got into my car, and as he was pulling away, he yelled out his car window at me. "I'm doing everything I can to change your mind. Come over." I sat and watched him leave because things just felt weird. I drove home, and my phone was blowing up the whole time. He was texting and calling, saying he was home and I should come over. Then he sent me a video of himself watching basketball on his couch alone. He started sending me messages saying he could see a future with me, that I was the most beautiful woman he'd ever met, that it was horrible for such a beautiful woman to be single, and that he liked our chances to be together. The entire coffee date was 40 minutes max. He continues to ask me to come over. I said I was happy to meet him for coffee, but I told him I wasn't going to come before I left, and was not going to back on what I said. Then, the calls really started. 7:55, 8, 8:02, 8:07, 8:11. He called and called over and over for the next several hours. I texted him after the first couple calls. He had sent me yet another text saying how beautiful and perfect I was, and he wanted to date and travel together. And all I could think to say was, "I'm sorry. I don't feel the same way about you that you seem to feel about me. I wish you well. Take care. He said he didn't understand. Did that mean I didn't want to see him again? So I replied, I'm sorry for not being clear. No, I do not want to see you again. I'm sorry. I wish you well. Goodbye. The calls and texts kept coming. I told him one more time to please stop. I had to turn off my phone. It kept vibrating so much. The texts were all about, what did I do wrong? Why won't you tell me so I can fix it and make this work between us? I really am a great guy and I like you so much. You owe it to tell me. If you tell me, then I'll stop bothering you. But you have to tell me I blocked his number. But my phone still logs calls attempts from blocked numbers, so I could see he was still calling all night up until 2 a.m. He called a few more times this morning and again this afternoon. I called my phone company this morning to check, and turns out he had sent me over 200 text messages in that one day. That was the tipping point, and I decided to go to the police station and at least talk to them, and possibly report it as suspicious behavior or harassment. All I had was his first name, which I'm pretty sure was a nickname, and a phone number. The cops were really nice and took down all the information. He had never threatened me, but I told him to stop and he wouldn't. They said that was enough to be concerned. I showed them the texts and the timing of his calls, and they said it definitely looked like obsessive and unstable behavior, and it was good that I came in, even just to put it on record in case things got worse. I felt so bad for even going there, like it was stupid to have ever even gone to meet him. But I've been on a lot of coffee dates and no one has ever done this kind of thing before. After I left the station, I got home and checked my phone and had 3 voicemails from unknown numbers. And it was him pleading for me to call him and tell him how to make it right. He doesn't understand why I blocked him. Did he message me too much? Was it a bad move to call 80 times in a night? Why wouldn't I just talk to him? Now, I'm low-key terrified of what will happen next. Will the cops call him? If they do, will it make him mad? I'm pretty sure I didn't tell him about what area of the city I live in or where I work, and all he had was my phone number, no Facebook, no WhatsApp, or other socials. I considered changing my cell phone number, but I'm hoping that he'll get the point after a few days of silence and give up. I'm so shocked, I don't even know what to do next. I know people. I'm 18 years old, and after a particularly bad breakup, I decided that I might as well try my hand at Plenty of Fish. My mom had met her boyfriend from there and he seemed nice enough, and I figured why not? So I set up a profile, and within a few days, I had a few people messaging me, but nothing was really working out. Then, this guy messaged me named Josh. Josh was really attractive and really sweet, and he asked me really engaging questions about a few things on my profile, like why I like singing so much, and what I thought about some issues going on in the news recently. It was refreshing amid the many questions of if I've ever known a real man, or was I into this particular thing or wanted to hook up. After talking to him for about a week, I decided that maybe it would be nice if we met in person, so we arranged to meet at a store near my house. I used to work there, so it's really no big deal to me, and I don't have a car, so I just walked. He looked like his profile and nothing seemed really weird. He was very sweet and opened the car door for me, and we went down to the creek. Now, I live in the South United States in a small town, so basically the only thing to do down here is to go swimming, drive around, or go to a slightly bigger town and mess around over there. I just thought of sitting down in a creek would be nice. After all, it was something that we did both enjoy. Sadly, the creek near my house was very shallow due to a rainstorm that came through and brushed a lot of the sand from the bank into the water. So we decided to go to a different creek that he said was deeper, about 15 minutes away from my house. No big deal. Josh told me that a friend of his named Nick was supposed to be there with his girlfriend, but when we got there, there was no other cars. I was apprehensive, so I guess he saw it on my face and called his friend. Nick said they'd be coming shortly, and there was nothing to worry about, but they were okay and it was fine. Nick never showed up. The date was alright, mostly. We talked basic things like what we enjoy about each other's personality and what we can turn into if this went that far. I got a red flag as we were getting out of the water He asked me over and over and over again if after this date I was going to be his girlfriend. This was only our first date, and I'm not that type of person. I don't really trust people, so me being alone with this guy with a big stretch in and of itself, I told him, after the date is over, I'll give you an answer. But he kept pushing me. I didn't say anything after that, just ignored him. We put on our clothes and got back in the car. He handed me a shirt to throw on since mine was a little thin. We decided to go to the park. On the way, he just kept asking me over and over and over again to be his girlfriend, that he really liked me, and really wanted it to work out. I told him that after the date, I was going to give him an answer. I usually text my mother where I was whenever I was off with anyone. I always do. I texted my mother and told her that I felt kind of weird about Josh, but she said it was probably just jitters. I trusted my mother, so I brushed it off and went to park anyways. When we were there, he just kept asking, will you be my girlfriend, over and over again. Eventually, I just got sick of him asking, so I said fine. I didn't really want to. I felt weird, but I still said yes. I shouldn't have done that, and that was probably the biggest mistake I made. After that, we went to go see Jurassic World, which was playing in another town about 10 minutes away from there. After talking to my mom, making sure it was okay that I stay out a little later than planned, we headed that way. The movie was nice, but Josh wasn't. At the movies, he started getting really touchy-feely, like constantly trying to hold my hand, or play with my hair, or get me to sit on his lap. Normally I like those things, because it's a sign of affection, but with him it was really weird and I wasn't feeling it. I asked him to stop and even swatted his hand away a couple times. We're driving back home, I got a text from my ex. It wasn't anything bad, just asking how I've been and if I was okay. We were still okay, I guess. We weren't friends, but we weren't enemies either. He would just pop in to check on me from time to time, and I would do the same for him, no big deal. But when Josh saw the text, he went off. I told him it was my ex, and that we were still cool, but there was nothing to worry about. It turned into something I definitely needed to worry about. It was then that Josh proceeded to tell me that his brother is a higher up of a gang here in the state I live. That weirded me out. But people lie about that sometimes before, so I didn't really take it seriously. And that's when he started threatening me. He took my phone away from me in the car, mind you, and while driving, proceeded to go to my Facebook and change my profile picture and put in a relationship. I asked him what in the world he was doing, but he wouldn't let me see my phone. I was pissed, but something told me not to go off, so I didn't. Instead, I waited until he was done and texted my ex to just leave me alone, and he said okay. That was it. I was done talking to him, and it was just me and Josh in the car. That's when Josh proceeded to threaten to slit my ex's and his little sister's throat in front of me if I ever spoke to him again. What really got me is I never told him that my ex had a little sister, and he had her by name. I was really freaked out, but I really couldn't do anything. I was still stuck in the car with this guy. I really wanted to leave, but I didn't have a way out, so I just waited until he took me home. He ended up talking to my parents and staying out until almost 4 a.m. I wanted to go to sleep. Whenever I tried, he would try to make me lay on him. I didn't want to, but if I moved, he would pick my head up and just move me right back, so I just stopped, pretended to be asleep, and wait until he left and gave me a kiss on the forehead. The next day was my brother's birthday, and my mom had invited him over, so I waited until he came to the house before the party started. I called him to remind him the party was happening, and he was talking about how a few friends of his has gotten word of who my ex was and where he lived. He started cussing under his breath in Russian. I don't speak Russian, but I know cussing when I hear it. When he got to the house, he told me that he knew people who could handle him, me, and my ex. I told him it wasn't necessary, and to cut it out. I told him the one thing he was never supposed to do is threaten me, and that I didn't feel safe and that he needed to leave. He begged me to stay, begged me to give him a second chance, but I wasn't giving up. Something about it just rubbed me the wrong way. Normally, I do give people second chances, but not this time. He pulled out his wallet to grab something from inside it. I believe it was his lighter, and I saw his ID. His profile said he was 22, but the birth year was off. If he was only 22, then he should have been born in the year 1995. But that is not what is said on his ID. The last name he told me, Andrews, was also wrong. It was not the one on his ID. Needless to say, I was done. I was very, very done. I told him to take the shirt he had given me when we had went to swimming, and then to leave. He got pissed. He threw his shirt away and swore up and down that he would change. That would never happen again. I didn't believe him, not from the look in his eyes. I know that look, and it's not what I was going to trust. He tried to follow me inside and smack me on the ass as I was going inside, but because I was in the middle of cooking, when he showed up, I had a hot spatula waiting on the stove for him. I told my mother that if he ever showed up again to shoot him. My family doesn't play like that. I told him my parents were on their way home and that he needed to leave. He asked if he needed to go and I said yes. So he said goodbye, got in his car, and left. That part is fairly normal, I guess. But what really freaked me out is what I found out after he left. I googled his name that I saw on his ID. And what I found was beyond disturbing. Apparently, he had kept a woman he was in a relationship with, a prisoner, for basically 3 months while he beat the crap out of her. She refused to get a tattoo of his name, so he instead carved his initials on her back. What I read in the police report honestly made me start crying. He was a horrible person. I'm still scared because I don't know if he has people out there looking for me or my ex or his sister. But what scares me the most is that I could have been next. So, Josh, let's never meet again. A random stalker now has my address, thanks to the police. I was driving home when I realized a truck had been behind me for miles. Just to be precautious, I made an abrupt last U-turn. He did too. It was there that I realized he was following me. While on the phone with 911, I made sharp turns and red lights to try to lose him. He wouldn't stop, literally almost hit my car a couple of times as he sped up trying to catch me. The 911 operator instructed me to go to a local grocery store and wait for the police. I parked right in front of the store's entrance, surveillance cameras, and waited. He decided to park his car at a distance and waited for me to get out of my car. All of a sudden, I heard a hard knock at the window. I freaked out and it turned out to be the grocery manager letting me know 911 just notified him of the situation. There was a police report filed. He asked if I wanted to go inside the store and he would protect me until the cops arrived. I honestly feared the worst and told him no, I was shaking. But I thought this maniac might have a gun. He could shoot me and everyone in here, I said. Cops arrived and luckily cornered him in the back of the parking structure. I was shaking as she came to my car, my hand gripping the wheel very tightly. They arrested him soon after for a third DUI, and the police report was officially stated. I don't know who he was. Apparently, he lived a couple miles away from me. Unfortunately, 2 months later, I received a letter to notify me that I may be subpoenaed. I called the DMV who issued the letter, and they notified me that not only is he free again, but that my information, including my address, were on the police report that was provided to him and his attorney. Thanks, LAPD. I now live in fear that he may come any day and hurt me. So the group that ruined my feeling of safety. So a bit of context first. I live in a very small town. Everyone there pretty much knows everyone else. And unless you're visiting somewhere out of town, you can usually get anywhere you want to go by walking within 15 minutes at most. Because of this, it's also a very safe feeling place. A lot of people I know just leave their doors unlocked. I don't, because I've experienced in other less safe locations. And our police report is actually a source of comedy because of some of the random and small crimes they respond to. But we also got a lot of tourists in the summertime, and that's when I typically tend to avoid town because I don't like large crowds. These people are the type of get crazy, drunk, or high and just feel like they can do what they want due to our town's reputation as a relaxed place, but they are generally harmless, if annoying. So one summer night, I was walking along a bike path to my house. This bike path runs right by a large forest that people like to hike through during the day, and I was currently a little ways in alongside it. It was getting close to midnight, more like 11:30, and so all I really had for light at the moment was my phone's flashlight. since my town usually reserves streetlights for inside the main area. It was then that I heard what sounded like a woman screaming off in the woods. Now, of course, this startled me, but a moment to reconsider made me realize just how many things they could have been. Various animals have been described as making a similar noise, or maybe some tourists were drunk and partying out by the lake in there. However, I still found myself moving a bit farther away from the woods as I continued walking. The screaming continued off and on, which freaked me out a bit more, but I was still theorizing on it being an animal. It wasn't until I heard what sounded like the screaming being muffled that I really panicked. It sounded unmistakably like someone placing their hand over someone else's mouth, and I could hear more heavy breathing from that direction. As I continued walking at a faster pace, I dialed the police and told them that they might want to come check out the forest, and I explained what I had heard. The guy I talked to agreed and said I didn't have to stay in the area if I didn't feel safe, but they would maybe need to call me to the station for questioning if they found anything. Of course, I didn't want to stick around, so I told them as such and then hung up. And then I saw a figure out in the darkness ahead, walking towards me. I audibly gasped. Used to think it was a thing people say in horror stories to spice them up, but this was involuntary. Still not wanting to believe that I was in one of my worst nightmares, I figured that this was just possibly someone else who, like me, was using the bike path to get home. I figured we'd pass each other, I'd momentarily have some company and comfort, and then we'd head our separate ways. The guy got closer to me, and I realized that he was walking towards me on my side, with no intention to switching over to let me go. And every time I would switch sides, he would do the same. I also realized that, regardless of how dark it was, I would have seen him coming on the bike path way before he got this close, so he most likely went onto the path from the forest. I turned back the way I came and saw another figure behind me, still standing there. Standing still. I started to exit off of the path and just make my way into town from a back street. But as I started to go to the side, the guy finally spoke. And the freakiest thing about it is that he sounded perfectly normal and not creepy at all, in a tone of voice that would be just like anyone else speaking, and not your classic scary story creep. "Why'd you call the cops?" he said to me in a disappointed tone, like how you'd ask a child why they'd lied to you. I took off running away from the bike path and up a random street that was nowhere near my house. I heard the footsteps of people giving chase, though that could have been my own imagination. I just kept running, and since I'm not really in shape, I knew I'd have to stop soon to catch my breath. But I swear that there were multiple sets of footsteps behind me, as in more than two people I've already seen. Right as I was about to slow down, the sounds of a car getting closer were heard, and the red and blue lights associated with the police could be seen coming. The footsteps behind me faded away and soon disappeared altogether. I walked at a brisk pace the rest of the way home, and that was the end of it. I still don't know what any of that was, but I'm guessing nothing was found, as I was never called down to the station for questioning. I don't really know how the police go about their business, as this was my first instance ever of having to call them. But I'm pretty sure that's why I wouldn't be called. To this day, I have yet to go hiking there ever again or stay out past 10, so, to the group of people who made it so that I'll never feel safe again, let's not meet.